Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking at one of the absolute most bizarre, extreme, and honestly genuinely fascinating natural phenomena on the planet. I mean, usually when we think of rivers, right, we picture these permanent, carved channels reliably carrying water from the mountains all the way down to the sea. But what if a river didn't behave that way? What if a river was so overloaded, literally so heavy with earth, that it actually choked on its own contents and forced itself to completely change course? Well, today we are unpacking the incredible dynamics of the Pilcomayo River. It's this wild transboundary system that is constantly rewriting the landscape of South America.
So, I want you to hold this central mystery in your head as we go through this explainer. What actually happens when a river carries so much earth that it literally buries itself? And hey, this is not some theoretical question. It's an active, violent, and continuous geological process happening right this very second. It destroys habitats, it creates massive geopolitical headaches, and it basically challenges everything we traditionally understand about how rivers are actually supposed to work.
Okay, let's dive into this and get our bearings. If you trace the path of the Pilcomayo River, it starts way high up in the steep tectonic environment of the Bolivian Andes. From up there, it rushes down, gathering all this immense speed and power, until, boom, it hits the incredibly flat plains of the Gran Chaco, which is a region shared with Paraguay and Argentina. It's exactly this sudden transition from those steep, fast-flowing mountain ranges straight into a massive flat plain that sets the stage for the absolute geomorphological chaos we're about to explore. Section 1. The Extremes. Mind-boggling sediment transport.
Okay, so during flood events, the suspended sediment concentration in the Pilcomayo peaks at an absolutely unbelievable 60 to 100 grams per liter. Just picture that for a second. If you scooped up a 1-liter bottle of this river water during a flood, up to a tenth of that bottle's actual weight is just pure solid earth. It is practically liquid mud. This intense sediment transport context puts the Pilcomayo firmly on the map as one of the most sediment-laden rivers anywhere on Earth.
And when you add up all those liters of muddy water over an entire year, you get another truly staggering number. Researchers have actually measured a record sediment yield right at the mountain outlet in a Bolivian town called Villamontes. Are you ready for this? 80 to 140 million tons per year. That's 80 to 140 megatons of rock, sand, and silt being actively dragged down from the Andes and just dumped straight into the Gran Chaco every single year. As this quote from the source material highlights, it's one of the most sediment-laden rivers in the world, resulting in highly mobile channels and complex geomorphological dynamics. Basically, that extraordinary volume of earth has to go somewhere, right? When you push millions of tons of sediment out of those steep mountains and onto a totally flat plain, the river just cannot carry its load anymore. The water slows down, it loses all its energy, and the earth drops right out of suspension. That massive sediment saturation is what actually drives the highly mobile channels and unpredictable dynamics that totally define this region. Section 2. The Mechanics of Collapse, a river that self-destructs. So this all results in a process formerly known as river collapse. And let's be clear, this isn't just your standard flooding. Because the river is dumping so much sediment directly onto the channel bed, the channel actively chokes and clogs itself up. It literally buries its own pathway. And when the main channel gets completely blocked by its own debris, well, the water has absolutely no choice but to breach its banks and carve out a completely new path across the floodplain. This triggers this fascinating continuous upstream retreat of the river's endpoint. And this brilliantly illustrates what that avulsion process looks like in action at near Pozo Hondo and Mission La Ponge. The clogged channel actively shifts, jumping its banks to abandon its old sediment-choked pathway, and it tears a brand new channel right through the landscape. It is a highly dynamic, living system that utterly refuses to stay in just one place. But as they say, nature hates a vacuum. A super fascinating consequence of this constant shifting is what happens to the paths that get left behind. As the river avulses and abandons those old sediment-filled channels, those areas undergo this sudden, explosive growth of vegetation. It's wild. The fresh, nutrient-rich sediment becomes a prime target for pioneer plant species. They rapidly take over and lock that new ground into place, which actually guarantees that the river can't return to its old path.
Section 3. Earth's active megafan, building land through chaos.
This constant cycle of clogging and avulsion means the Pilcomayo is essentially building this massive, shifting megafan of sediment. If you're not familiar, a megafan is a huge, fan-shaped accumulation of sediment, and the Pilcomayo is one of the most dynamic on Earth, actively growing and shifting as we speak.
But listen, this geological marvel comes with some really intense human and environmental stakes. This active megafan severely disrupts the lives of the people living along its shifting borders. We're talking about communities facing recurrent, entirely unpredictable flooding cycles. That forces so many people to either migrate or temporarily resettle, creating immense socioeconomic vulnerability. Plus, the shifting river fragments floodplain habitats, it threatens biodiversity, and it causes severe disruption for indigenous communities whose entire culture and livelihoods depend heavily on stable fishing grounds.
So the crucial point here is that this isn't just an environmental challenge, it's a literal geopolitical nightmare. The Pilcomayo serves as a transboundary water resource, and in many places it actually acts as the official international border between Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. So think about it. How in the world do you manage a shared resource and a shared border when the river unevenly clogs and physically shifts international boundaries kilometers away from where they were originally mapped? Yeah, it triggers constant international negotiations over water security and resource management.
Section 4. Tracking geomorphological chaos, monitoring 4 decades of change.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual solution. To support these communities and promote adaptive management, researchers have developed a cutting-edge, multi-scale monitoring framework to quantify over 4 decades of these wild dynamics. First off, they use the Google Earth Engine platform to process massive time series of Landsat satellite imagery, going all the way back to the 1990s. Then, they combine that with modern, super high-resolution Sentinel satellite data. Finally, they validate all those space-based observations with precise drone mapping and in-situ field checks right there on the ground. It's this incredible integration of big data and boots-on-the-ground science.
A key hypothesis guiding all of this research is that lateral connectivity, which is just the ability of the river to freely interact with its floodplain, is a primary indicator of river health. But there's this growing concern that human pressures, things like building embankments and widespread deforestation, are severely reducing these vital lateral dynamics. By artificially trying to lock this wildly dynamic river into a single permanent channel, we might actually be degrading the broader ecosystem and making the whole system way more vulnerable to catastrophic, extreme floods.
We've seen the absolute awe-inspiring power of the Pilcomayo today, from its staggering sediment loads to its self-destructing channels and its ability to just continually rewrite the map of the Gran Chaco. It really is an unstoppable force of nature. But as human pressures mount and communities strive to figure out how to live alongside it, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. How exactly do we adaptively manage and live with a river whose very nature, its defining characteristic, is to unpredictably shift, choke, and collapse? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating geomorphological mystery with me.